Okay, everyone, the clock has struck 10. Welcome to the Restart Hawaii webinar series hosted by Business Law Corps, which we'll be telling you a little bit about. Before we get going, just a few administrative items. This is a part of a series of webinars to help Hawaii businesses get going. I know that a number have, had challenges. Some have gone under. There are people who lost their jobs. So as lawyers, we thought we could roll up our sleeves and really help you out and help you get things done without cost or at a much cheaper cost. The next webinar, by the way, is a week from today, 10 o'clock. Daniel Lamb from the Goodsill Law Firm will be talking about how you can fundraise and get money to get your business. That'll be the next topic. And there are a series of other topics. You've probably all seen them on our Eventbrite page. Just FYI, we're recording this. And so we have muted you, turned off your videos. If you do speak or you do turn on your video, you will be seen in the recording. And so we assume that that would be okay with you. But I just wanted to know, we're going to publish these webinars probably after April, after the webinar series is done. And so we want to make it available widely. As well as we're going to share the materials that have been prepared for each webinar in a complete manual of forms that we'll make available at the same time that we publish the video. So FYI, but we're not going to publish them until after the webinar series is POW. And with that, before introducing the speakers, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Kat Tashner, who's a co-founder of the Business Law Corps, to say a few words about the Business Law Corps and what we do.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks, Greg. My name is Kat Tashner. I'm the co-founder of the Business Law Corps. We're a nonprofit organization that provides free legal services to small businesses and entrepreneurs. So please think of us as you grow your business, develop your business ideas. Some of the things that we do are seminars like this. We also have free weekly legal appointments. So if you have a question about, what kind of entity should I be, or, I want to bring on a partner, what's the best way to structure it? If you want to chat with an attorney for 30 minutes, we have 4 appointments per week, and I'll drop a link to the signups for those appointments into the chat box. We also do direct legal services, which you can apply for at our website, and I will leave a link to our website in the chat as well. Note that we are updating it. I know it's out of date, but it will look better at some point. But anyway, that's the Business Law Corps in a nutshell. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to be assisting with moderating. So if you have any questions, you can either feel free to chat them directly to me or put them into the chat box. And as Greg mentioned, we're going to hold the questions until the very end, but I'll try to introduce them for you. So anyway, thank you very much for attending today. Looking forward to learning from Kimi and Ikaika.
Thank you, Kat. Now to introduce Ikaika and Kimi, and really their background is full of great experiences in community service, and too much really for me to, we want to have time for you to actually learn something substantively. But they're both with the law firm of Chun Kerr, LLC. Kimi practices in real estate and finance and general business. She's very active in the community. I know that she's, I see she's president-elect now for the Iolani Alumni Association. She's director of Hawaii Women's Lawyers, board member for the Hawaii State Bar Foundation, national board for the Planned Parenthood Votes Northwest in Hawaii. I don't know where she has time to do all this. And plus she helps us with our food distributions and kupuna delivery service through Helps on the Way. So amazing volunteer. Ikaika, I've met the past year through this program. He's also equally impressive. He had worked in government for 10 years in the commercial real estate industry. So he doesn't just practice law, he brings that kind of experience. He does business transactions and real estate and finance like Kimi. He's a member of the State Bar Real Property and Financial Services Business and Tax Sections. Wow, that's a lot. And he serves as secretary of the tax section. So we're really fortunate to have our speakers today, as well as all the speakers in the series, donating their time and talent and information. And I know they've worked hard for today's presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to them. They can say a few more words about themselves and their firm, and they'll launch into their PowerPoint. I will post links in the chat. I might give it a few more minutes to make sure everyone signs on who's coming to the materials as well as to their PowerPoint. So I'll probably post those at about 10:30 just to make sure everyone's on first. Before I do that, it'll be a link to my Dropbox folder where their materials are present. Note that they're drafts right now. We've told our speakers they can keep working on until we publish the manual. So, but you get an advanced preview because you've been kind enough to join us today. So with that, I will turn it over to Kimi and Ikaika and to do your thing. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Kat. Like they said, my name is Kimi Ide-Foster. I'm an attorney with Chun Kerr. I've been here since after law school in 2014. That's getting further and further away every time I say it. I do real estate, business, and finance, and we're really excited to be able to share this with you guys because, you know, I do volunteer at Business Law Corp, and I think that there are so many great ideas for businesses in Hawaii, and not having a lawyer should not be an impediment to you guys being able to do something. So that's kind of where we're coming from today. Kike?
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Ikaika Rawlins. Very happy to be here with all of you today. As you know, I'm with the same firm as Kimi, Chun Kerr, and practicing in the area of real estate, business transactions, and prior to joining Chun Kerr, I was at the Hawaii State Tax Department. So kind of a broader range of experience, but yeah, happy to be here. And just recently started volunteering with Business Law Corps, and yeah, it's been a really good experience. And like just to echo what Kimi said, to being able to provide services to those who are looking to get business started going in Hawaii, particularly now, you know, I believe is super important. So I'm very happy to be here and participating in the program.
Okay, Greg, is it okay if we go ahead and get started then, or you want to? Okay.
I think I'm out of words.
You want to wait a little bit?
Yeah.
That's a first. Oh my
That's
God.
a first.
I know. No, I think we can get going. And you know, I'm sure we'll interrupt you if we need to say something, but we'll try not to. But we'll hold the questions again, like Kat said, to the end, and we'll leave it hopefully 15 or 20 minutes for that. And then I don't know if Kimi and Ikaika will hold on for a few minutes after the webinar in case people want to hang out and ask a few more questions. But if you do want to do that, just stay online. Okay. All right. No, I'll turn it over to you guys. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and share your screen and get going on.
And then, sorry, before we start, Greg and Kat, you guys are going to have to do the admitting now.
Yeah.
Good?
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
All right, let me, I'm always so pleased with myself when I do this correctly. Okay. So obviously, if you're here, you registered for this, you know that we are doing how to navigate state agencies. Before we get started, there's a couple of assumptions that we're going to be working off of. One is that although there are many, many business entities that you can form, some of you probably went to Ryan's presentation, which I think was a couple weeks ago. For the time that we have here, and just for ease of management and administrative hassle, we're going to be focusing on a limited liability company. Just as some background there, it is the most popular, Taika, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the most popular business structure for small businesses in the US, not just Hawaii. And there's a bunch of reasons for that that we'll get into. If you are doing a small business, I really cannot think of a reason why you would not want to do an LLC. It's the easiest thing to manage in terms of your admin, your decision-making, taxes. Kaika's going to touch on that later, but it's just, like I said, it's the way that I would recommend a client to do this. So the first thing you're going to want to do then is you're going to be working with the DCCA. So the DCCA is the main agency we're going to be focusing on today. It is the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and it is, I think, the most helpful state agency that I've ever come across. Their clerks are always available. They'll actually call you back, kind of a miracle. You can send them emails, you can ask them questions about pretty much anything on there. And if they do not know the answer, they will route you to somebody who does. So all of the websites and whatnot will be available at the end of the PowerPoint and in the written materials. So jumping into that, the first thing we're going to talk about is you need to know if your name is available. This might sound like a silly thing if you're thinking of like a very unique name or you want to name it after yourself, but think of how many businesses in Hawaii have Aloha in it, or Lanikai, or, you know, any of those places. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to go on the business name search and you're going to type in your name. If it comes up with something, that name is already taken. So do a different variation of it. Some companies, some bigger companies I know, they do, when they're related entities, they do like one name with a 1 after it and then another name with a 2 after it. I wouldn't really recommend doing that. I would pick something that's relatively unique, so that, you know, it's your name. Oh, and also, sorry, I'll touch on this a little bit later. Speaking about picking your name, unique is good, too unique is bad. Pick something that is relatively simple. Pick something that, please, for the love of God, for your attorneys, for your tax people, your accountants, avoid extra punctuation. Ikaika and I were just laughing about this last week. Well, I was laughing. He actually had to deal with it. Yeah. Where he had an entity that was, what was it? It was a name, L period, C period, limited liability company, a Hawaii limited liability company.
Correct. Yeah, with extra commas thrown in there too, just for fun. Right.
Yeah, just don't do that. Like, for one thing, everyone's gonna forget the comma later on anyways. No one's gonna remember to put the periods. And the reason it's important that you know what your company name is that, one, it's your company, it's your entity. Two, if you ever want to buy property, enter into a lease of that, open up a bank account, and you don't put the wrong entity, or you don't put the correct entity in there with the correct punctuation, it will bounce. And you're gonna have to go back and do it again. And it's just a pain. I mean, no one needs the extra periods. So make that as a to-do note for your name. Actually getting started. So the DCCA has this really cool wizard program. It's called the Hawaii Business Express. It's shown up on the screen right now. It's pretty much a one-stop shop for, you know, getting your company registered, managing it when you're doing your annual report. It's very, very, very user-friendly. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to go to Hawaii Business Express and you're going to click Start, just like we have circled on the screen. You're going to select that you want to register a new business. You're going to say, yes, it's based in Hawaii. And a note about that, if you are going to be working in Hawaii, if your services are primarily in Hawaii, and if you're on this webinar, I assume that that's the case, there's really no reason for you not to register in Hawaii. You may have heard at some point that some companies, a lot of companies have registered in Delaware, and that's a very, very common thing for people to do, or at least it used to be. A little bit of history there is that Delaware is a state that essentially won what's called the race to the bottom. When companies were getting going in the US, they, got some in the waiting room. They basically deregulated so much that they made it very easy to register there. Now that things are a little more standardized, there's really no good reason not to register in Hawaii. It's actually, I think, cheaper, right, Ikaika? Than it is to register in Delaware. Yeah. Yeah, your filing fees are less. The DCCA is based here, so it's much easier than trying to call somebody on the mainland and trying to get help. And I think that they're a little bit more user-friendly when you do it here. The only time I would recommend possibly looking somewhere else, like a Delaware or Nevada corporation, is if you have a very complex tax structure. They have a little more flexibility and a little bit more creativity there. But again, if you are here, there's a good chance that you're kind of starting a small business or getting restarted. So I would recommend you base yourself in Hawaii. So your very first initial business filing, you're going to type in your name. Like I said, you do need to include limited liability company or LLC. Do not include both. Do not include comma LLC. I'm going to harp on this the whole time because I can't tell you how many deals it has held up because somebody doesn't know their company name. You're going to enter in the mailing address of your principal office. So that's, for some people, that's their house. For some people, that's a downtown. You know, for some people, it's a PO box. It's just somewhere that, you know, they can get regular mail, which is different than your registered agent. So your registered agent needs to have a presence in Hawaii. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can go about doing this. The purpose of an agent is to receive legal process. So think, I mean, this is worst case scenario. Think you're getting served for something. they would go to the registered agent that shows up on the DCCA. Now that can be a person, it can be a Hawaii entity, or what a lot of corporations or a lot of clients do is they use a professional service company. And that's useful if you want to protect your privacy, you don't really want to list your home address. It cannot be a PO box, so it needs to be a physical place that they're serving to, a physical person. And if that's something you're interested in, we did cover that a little bit in the written material, so we can talk about that then. Your organizers, that can be yourself. Sometimes that's us when we do it on behalf of clients. It doesn't really make a huge amount of difference who's organizing it. It's just that they need something for their record. So period of duration is basically how long does your company last? I don't think I've ever actually seen a good reason to put an end date for a couple of reasons. One is you can wind up your company whenever you want to wind up your company. And two, if you have an end date, a lot of people forget that they have an end date and then they let their company lapse unintentionally. So my recommendation is always check at will. There might be some reasons for tax or whatnot that I can get into, but for just kind of basic business common sense, I would check at will.
Yeah, I'll just interject here on that one, Kimi. I've seen it, I've seen, companies put an expiration date for their LLC. If it's just if there's, a major investment and, one of the partners who's coming in doesn't want to have the LLC accidentally terminated or to give any kind of an alternative grounds for the LLC to be terminated. So to protect their interests on the investment side, they'll require putting in expiration date usually far out in the future. But again, for like 99% of people, the at-will selection is the right choice.
Yeah. And I think that, this actually trips up more first-time business users than you would expect. I think because they're thinking, oh my God, if I have this company in perpetuity, like, is it liable in perpetuity? Does this just go on forever and ever? And I mean, the answer is sort of yes. But like I said, you can wrap up anytime you want. And if we have time at the end, we'll touch a little bit about dissolving companies because, if you had a business that didn't go so well or you're trying to restart things, you might actually need some help with dissolving your company. So if we have some time, we'll touch on that at the end. So management. This is a little bit interesting because I think a lot of first-time business entrepreneurs automatically think, oh, well, I have X amount of investors or X amount of people doing this with me. We're all members. Let's member manage this. I would recommend against doing that for a couple of reasons. One is odds are not everybody wants to be involved in the day-to-day running of a company. People have other jobs. Some people just aren't that assertive. Some people just don't have that much of an opinion about what's going on. The other thing is, and I think that one of the earlier presentations talked about this, when a company is what's called member managed, it means, unless you've allocated the votes differently, it means everybody has a say. And everybody has the same say, which means you can find yourself locked up with analysis of paralysis of analysis, where everyone's either afraid to jump or they all have different opinions about this, and it's just not very good. It's not productive. What we recommend in 9 times out of 10 is do a manager-managed LLC, which basically means that you appoint a person or an entity to make the day-to-day decisions of the company. So that's, signing contracts, running the books, things like that. You can use your operating agreement, which I will touch on in a minute, to limit your authority of a manager. So if you want to say, for loans that are $100,000 or less, the manager can go ahead and sign. But anything more than that, they got to get the members to all agree to it. And the reason this is preferable for a lot of companies is it just frees up the members to go about living their lives. And it's somebody that, you've appointed to take care of the business, the company. Now, the manager does not need to be a member of the company. It doesn't even have to be someone related to, like, it can be a completely random entity or person. And this is kind of nice for some people, and I don't know if this is going to be applicable to everyone here, but some people like the privacy that this affords to people. Because when you search the DCCA, and if you are a manager-managed company, your members will not show up. Only the manager will show up. So this is a little bit of an extreme example. But we had this when we were helping former President Obama purchase some property here in Hawaii. And they just had, they didn't come to a Hawaii attorney to set their entities. And so they checked member managed. And Lynn Kawano and investigative reporting got a hold of that and figured out almost instantly who was buying the land. And then they had the gall to go and get all nuts at our firm about, you know, how could you not protect our identity? And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Mhm.
You did your registration and you didn't ask for our help. So that's an extreme example, but you know, it is something that can happen. This is another one that I don't think I've ever seen a reason to check why members of an LLC should be liable for debts and obligations. The whole point of an LLC is to limit your liability and to create a barrier between yourself and the company, which I think was probably touched on in one of the earlier webinars. But Ikaika, is there a tax reason, or is there something that you would want to be liable for all debt?
I have no idea. This has been one of the most puzzling items on the form that I've seen. I don't see any reason why. I mean, that's the LL portion of LLC is to limit your liability. So I don't know why anyone would check any other box. But yeah, good. It's good to highlight. Just be sure you check that box, the correct box.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Frankly, I'm not even sure why it's on there. Then finally is your signature of your organizer. Back in the day, that used to be a physical signature. But since they started Hawaii Business Express, you literally just typed your name in twice. And all of this, and I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit backwards. All of this is related to your articles of organization, which is kind of like your birth certificate of your LLC. It's your very initial paperwork. It's what creates your entity legally. You're going to file all of this paperwork with the DCCA. And if you are doing this and you're clicking through Hawaii Business Express, it's going to look exactly the way it did on the PowerPoint. And review and purchase, there is a filing fee of $50. Or if you want expedited, it's $75. So regular filing, I think, takes about 7 to 10 days, and expedited can turn around in 2 to 3 or 2 to 4. We do have sometimes that we need people to do it expedited because they need to sign an agreement right away, or they need to get a loan right away. But for the most part, you can probably just do it regular expedited, regular filing. When you get your form back, it will look like this with the little, if you can see in the top left corner of the image on the left-hand side, it has the date and confirmation that your articles have been accepted for filing. And that means congratulations, your company now exists. Before I turn this over to Ikaika to talk a little bit more about taxes, now that your company exists, I would recommend, and it's in our materials, that you have at least a simple operating agreement. An operating agreement, so if you're thinking of the articles as kind of like your birth certificate, your operating agreement is like its DNA. It spells out the rules, the regulations, the roles for your members, the manager. I would not appoint officers. I hate it when I see that. It just makes an extra layer of complication. That's where you would set your thresholds for what somebody can and cannot do as the manager. And we included a sample form. They can be very, very simple. The other big reason that I would suggest an operating agreement is I have never seen a client be able to get a loan from a bank without one. It's a little bit odd actually, because if you do not have an operating agreement, what happens is we call it, you default to the statute, and that's the Hawaii Revised Statute Chapter 428. And that just spells out kind of, you know, the Uniform Limited Liability Company Act, and basically it's the default. If you don't have your own set of rules, it's going to go to that. But like I said, getting a loan is the big one. You're probably going to need that paperwork to open up an account with the bank. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to take those after. Other than that, I think I'll turn over to Kikes for tax, because I know very little about that.
Thank you, Kimi. And and just another to build off of another reason for the on the operating agreement. You know, another reason to have that too is like the default rules in the LLC Act may not clearly comply or align with your business objectives too for your business. You know, whatever the agreement is, if you've got multiple partners involved in the business, you know, each one has certain roles and responsibilities. the default rules in the LLC Act might be contrary to that intent. So that's another reason why you'd want to have an operating agreement, as Kimi noted. So getting into the tax ID aspect of things. So when you're forming your company, I mean, this is something, and Kimi can chime in here too, is a lot of what's forgotten is like that you're forming and you're going to be doing business, and businesses have to pay taxes. And sometimes it's not the first thing on people's minds when they're starting their company because they're excited about it. But when you are starting a Hawaii LLC, you will need to get at least two numbers, two tax ID numbers. The first is your GET, or your General Excise Tax License. That's obtained through the Department of Taxation on Form BB1, and we'll go into that a little bit further. And then in most cases, you will need to get an EIN, or it's also referred to as an FEIN, from the IRS. This is a tax ID. Employer ID number is the acronym that it relates to. And when I say most of the time you'll need it, is because if you're, there are, for LLCs, and I believe Ryan covered this, but for LLCs they're flow-through entities, pass-through entities for tax purposes, meaning that you don't get taxed at the entity level versus a corporation, which is taxed at the entity level. So because of that treatment, the LLC, when you have a single person who owns the LLC, a single member, an individual, which most LLCs are that, it's considered a disregarded entity for tax purposes. So if you're an individual who owns an LLC and you don't have any employees, then you can use your social security number as your tax ID number. So you don't technically need an EIN. But in most cases, you will need to get one because, number one, most of you are going to be having employees. And so if your LLC has employees, you need an EIN. If you have multiple members, if you have multiple members of your LLC, then you will also need to obtain an EIN. So likely you will need at least these two licenses. And just a note as well too, we're not covering the other licenses that might be needed for your specific business. For example, if you run a barber shop, I know that there's a cosmetology license that you need to obtain here in Hawaii, or a daycare. There's special licenses for each individual industry. The DCCA is a resource for those types of what they call professional and vocational licensing. And you can find that out on their website. But today we're just going to focus on the tax IDs. So Kimi, if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you.
Maybe.
Let's see. Okay, yeah. So the first is the General Excise Tax License. So the form to obtain the General Excise Tax License is Form BB1. For BB1, it's issued by the Department of Taxation. Now, just a note here that you can apply for the BB1 online, and there's a couple of ways that you can do it. You can get the BB1 through that Hawaii Business Express that Kimi was showing earlier through that site, or you can also get it online through the Department of Taxation's website at Hawaii Tax Online. And the information for that is on the written materials that are shown in the chat box there. You also can, just print out a paper copy from the web and file it in person with the Department of Tax, but by far the easiest way to do it is online. Just a note, note box 2 of the BB1, it requires you to provide an FEIN. So I'm taking it kind of a little bit out of a turn here, but you will need an EIN in order to be able to complete the form BB1. All right. The fee for the GET license is $20, and there are a pretty clear set of instructions on Form BB1 that should answer most of your questions. But if you do have any questions, we have resources here at the end of the materials. Call the Department of Taxation's Taxpayer Services if you do have questions about that. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please, Kimi? Thank you. Okay. The application for the EIN on Form SS4, this is a copy of the Form SS4 from the IRS's website. The EIN is a 9-digit number that's assigned to you for as a tax ID number. As I mentioned, 9 times out of 10, you're going to need an EIN. You're going to be required for it. And then sometimes, to be able to open a bank account, you're going to also need to be able to get an EIN. So you can apply for an EIN online through the IRS's website. It's the easiest way to be able to do it. You get a response back immediately with your tax ID number. It doesn't cost anything. Now you can call in and write to the IRS to be able to get it as well too, but by far the easiest way to do it is through the IRS's online portal. Okay, so that's it on the EIN. Can we go to the next slide, please, Kimi? All right, so this is a good. I don't know, Kimi. This is like this is a really fun way of saying this too. So can I try doing it?
Sure. You can do it. Go right ahead.
So Kimi's point here is, this is going back to what we talked about earlier about your company's name. Is one of the other matters that comes up is a trade name, right? So is registering an LLC the same thing as filing for a trade name, a trademark, or a service mark? So in short, no. Trade names, trademarks, and service marks are not legal entities. All right. So that's what Kimi talked about earlier. Your Hello LLC is one of the examples that we use in the materials here. Of course, no periods and no commas. But that would be the entity name that you register on your articles of organization. That's the company's actual business name. A trade name is a name that's synonymous with the business, that's a representative of, the business to the public. And in the examples that we provided in our written materials, we assume that, for example, Hello LLC intends to operate a chain of stores selling cell phones, plans, and accessories, and they want to operate under the trade name of Hello Mobile. And so what you do then is you go on the DCCA site and you'd look up the word Hello Mobile and see if there's anybody else who has the same name or a substantially similar name. And if not, then you can apply for a registration of that trade name with the DCCA. Now the form to use for that would be Form T-1, that's Tango-1. And that would register your trade name with the state. Now, the important thing to keep in mind about registering a trade name is it does not give you ownership of that particular name. You only get the right to use a name, you own a name, through use of that name. So you have to be using, in that example, Hello Mobile out there in your sign, your marketing material in your business in order to be able to maintain ownership of the building, of that name. And just to know too that if you don't, there's no squatting on any of these names. The department does have the right to be able to revoke a trade name registration if it hasn't been used for a year. So that is the very, very basics on trade names. Kimi, you got anything to add regarding trade names or best practices or anything like that?
Yeah. So this is another one that trips up a lot of either small businesses or first-time business owners. They go online and they register just a trade name. And I see this come through a lot when we have form agreements that some of our smaller clients use to interact with other entities. And I look them up online, I'm like, this isn't a business, or this is not an entity, this is just a trade name, which means that they typically default to having to contract with the individual person. And we don't want that. We don't want you guys signing contracts in your personal capacity. So just keep that in mind, that they are not the same thing. They do not achieve the same purpose. Register your company and then go after your trade name, your trademark, service mark.
Okay.
Our next slide is, I went a little bit out of order. This is talking about our operating agreement, which I said earlier. It's a good idea to have one. There is a sample form included in the written materials. And like Ikaika says, so the The rules set forth in the statute, they're fine. I mean, if you cannot put together an operating agreement, you're going to survive, your company's going to be fine. But there are things that just make it easier. Written consent, a bunch of things like you don't need to get everybody's consent to do A, B, and C. You can set all of that forth in your operating agreement, so useful. Very quickly in summary, like I said, there are a bunch of business entities you can choose, corporations, partnerships, but we're recommending an LLC. It's much easier to manage. Again, please pick a name that is easy to work with. I have clients that have given me a different variation of their name every single time a document comes to me. And it drives me nuts, it drives the tax office nuts, it drives the Bureau of Conveyances bananas, it just doesn't work. Manager managed or member managed. There might be a reason you want to do member managed. Maybe you want everybody to have a say. Typically, I would suggest doing a manager because not everybody needs to have a say in everything. Make sure that you have checked off that members are not liable for the debts of the company. Again, Ikaika and I don't even know why that box is there. Kikes, do you want to talk about filing your tax paperwork at the same time?
Yeah, filing your
easy.
tax paperwork at the time of formation. I think, I alluded to it earlier, but if you saw on Kimi's earlier slide, on Hawaii Business Express, you can actually apply for your BB1, the General Excise Tax License, at the same time as you actually file your Articles of Organization with the DCCA. So that's a great resource, and I'd suggest you're going to be doing business here, just go ahead and do both at the same time. It takes one extra step out of the process.
And that is pretty much it for us. The next few slides are just, I think, Greg, this is going to be provided to people later on, right? The PowerPoint.
Actually, I posted a link in the chat to the PowerPoint and the materials.
Perfect.
And so if you didn't receive them out there, let me know, because if you arrive after my post, I wouldn't get them. So.
Yeah.
And so,
okay, perfect. So this is just
there's one other quick point I wanted to make. And for some reason, I missed putting this slide in, but about annual reports for your LLC. So, you're required to file an annual report, as with the DCCA, if you own an LLC. And the date the report is due by just generally depends on when you registered. So there's 4 different report due dates. The link to the DCCA LLC annual report filing, that should have that information on the annual report. But just keep in mind that an annual report needs to be filed every year, and that's how you're able to maintain good standing with the DCCA. We often see the annual report becoming an issue when, for example, a client who owns an LLC wants to buy a property or enter into a lease somewhere, and they're required to obtain a certificate of good standing from the DCCA, and it comes back, well, you look at the DCCA and they haven't filed their annual report for a year, 2 years, 3 years. So it's not a huge deal, not an insurmountable thing, but it does it is a little cumbersome. It can become cumbersome if it may slow down the process in a transaction. So you just want to make sure you stay on top of your annual reports.
It also just looks bad. I mean, part of the thing is when you're starting up a new business, you want the credibility. You want to be able to say, you're in good standing, you've got your paperwork filed. And this is one of the easiest things to keep on top of. And also, I think, and Kat and Kikes, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think if you don't file it for 3 years, the DCCA automatically terminates you, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so file your annual report. Okay, file your annual report. It's very, very simple. There's a simple form you walk through every year, and that'll keep you in good standing. And with that, I think we are open for questions if you guys have anything for us. I'm going to stop sharing.
We do have a bunch of questions. Let me pull them up from the chat.
I have one to throw out when you're done.
Sure. Okay. First question. One of our attendees formed an S corporation in California, and they've been operating there for the past 7 years. They want to start operations here in Hawaii. Do I need to form a new business in Hawaii?
Kikes, you can talk about the benefits as to why you need to, but technically you do not. You can apply for what is called a foreign certificate of, I'm blanking on the name. Anyways, it's basically saying we're a foreign entity and we're going to do business here.
Yeah, correct.
So you do not need to form a new operation, but there might be benefits to it.
Yeah,
Ikaika.
the answer to that is no. You don't need to form a new company just to conduct operations in Hawaii. If so a couple of things. So there might be an S corp. I don't know how they may be formed in California though. If they're a C corp that made the S corp election, because LLCs can also make the S corp election as well too. So it just depends on whatever the original entity structure is. You file, like how Kimi said, apply for a certificate of authority here in Hawaii to do business here, pay the registration fee, which is similar to the registration that would be for starting up a new company here in Hawaii. And you'll be in compliance on the Hawaii side. As far as the benefits of doing a separate forming a separate company here in Hawaii, I mean, there could be a number of reasons why you'd want to do that. You kind of even want to further limit your liability. You want to create a separate silo for your activities here in Hawaii, if there's a reason for you to be able to want to do that. But if you're okay with the California corporation kind of being liable for activities that are going on in Hawaii, and for ease of administration, yeah, you could do it. You could just keep that same entity.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'm going to jump around to the questions a little bit because Ikaika, you just talked about S corporations. We have another question from one of our attendees. How do taxes get affected when you're an LLC, then changed to be taxed as an S corporation?
Oh boy. Well,
and keep in mind that we have I think we have a specific tax seminar coming up in like 2 weeks. So
yeah.
Maybe touch on it briefly, and then we can ask them to attend the tax heavy seminar.
Yeah, the Cliff Notes version of it is that as far as income tax goes, they're both flow through entities, right? So both S corps and LLCs are not taxed at the entity level. In the case of the S corp, it's the shareholder. In the case of the LLC, it's the members. They just pay it at that level. Tax gets paid at that level. So you avoid that second layer of tax for both. The difference for LLCs and S corps is that your FICA taxes, so like Social Security and those kinds of FICA taxes are affected by that structure, because the S corp can pay a shareholder who might be an employee a wage, and that wage will be the basis for the self-employment taxes. That's the Cliff Notes version of it. I'm sure Chris will probably go into a little bit more detail about that. But.
Cool. And sorry to jump around, I have one follow-up question to the previous question. What if, so this is the same person who had, a California entity, and they're thinking about offering services here. What if they want to offer services in all 50 states? Do they have to file in all 50 states?
Well, first off the bat, the laws are different in every state, but my guess would be yes. I think you'd have to have a presence if you're going to be doing business.
Yeah, and that's a really common problem right now. I know for many, particularly who have online businesses. Online businesses. When I was at the tax department, that was a significant issue, right? Because of there was a Supreme Court case that came out in 2019 and 2020, the Wayfair case that changed the way that provided a substantial presence economic nexus test. Basically, so if you're doing some significant business in the state, you're going to be subject to their taxing jurisdiction. So, it just all depends. But the case set forth kind of a baseline minimum standard of what's considered substantial enough for the state to tax. So, there's going to be some tax compliance that you're going to need to do in all those different, probably some business compliance as well too. But again, varies from state to state.
My favorite answer. I'm sure everyone hates the it depends, but it really does. I agree, Ikaika. I think the general rule of thumb is if you're making money, like substantial money in the state's going to want to tax it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
When in doubt, register.
Yep. Uncle Sam always gets their own. Yep.
All right.
If I could just add one thing there is if you have a physical presence somewhere, let's say you open a store in California, clearly you have to
Oh yeah.
do business.
Yeah.
If you just send product into the state, it's questionable whether you have to register there, because think about it. So many companies send products to Hawaii. I don't think they're all registered here.
Yeah, but now after Wayfair though, Greg, there's gonna, I mean, like because of that, you're doing, I don't know I forget what the statutes of like dollars or $200 actions per year. It's like you got to register in Hawaii.
Well, I know Hawaii went through all kinds of, gymnastics to get Expedia to pay tax, and because they have no presence here.
Right.
But they ended up paying 25 million, I think. So anyway, it's a moving target, but I think in general, still, to me, the dividing line is: did you set up shop there? Do you have salespeople in that state? Do you have employees or contractors? Then you have a problem if you don't register, I think, for sure. So,
now, the other thing to keep in mind too is that not every state has the general excise tax like Hawaii does, where we tax everything. Right? So depending on what, and that's where the dreaded "it depends" answer comes into play, right? Because
income tax is where it gets tricky. A lot more questions. I'm just trying to gauge it.
Yeah, we have a bunch more questions. So one, this one is about.
Can I interject real quick though, because I know a lot of these questions.
Of course you can.
Specific to people here, but can I just throw one question out generally, is to apply to everyone, which is, if you're an entrepreneur sitting there and you have a small business or you're starting one, this is all pretty daunting. Are there free services that they can obtain? Like, how do they get this stuff done? What of the things that you guys have talked about today do they need to hire a lawyer to do, and can they do it themselves? Because I think, especially with the pandemic, people aren't flush with cash to give to lawyers. So do you guys have any advice?
Yeah, definitely. So everything we walked through today, you are perfectly capable of doing on your own. I mean, you can hire an attorney to go through and file the paperwork, but if you have a computer, and even if you don't, you can print the stuff up and file it the old-fashioned way, so you can do that kind of thing. If you want advice about it, there are a couple of resources you can talk to. One is the Business Law Corps, the volunteer shifts that Kat was talking about earlier. And the other one that I'm not as familiar with, but I know is a very good resource, is the Business Action Center. Greg, I think you were talking about this a little bit earlier. It's a free service. Is that through the DCCA as well?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, if I could, I was going to share, but this might be a good time to just quickly share that. The Business Action Center.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Is, and they provided this information for us today. And this is their flyer. I posted a link to the folder with all of this information in it, so you should be able to get that. But this is their flyer, and we won't go through it, but you can see that they provide all of these services. The good thing about the Business Action Center is, if you go to the filing desk downtown, they're going to just take your filing. They don't really want to talk to you because they're not there to talk to people. This particular program is there for client service, and they view the public as clients and not just taxpayers or people that they have to deal with. So they're very customer oriented. I think Kimi had mentioned that before. So I would highly recommend going there or calling them. They actually are still physically going downtown every day. So you can actually, I think, walk into their office still. They're in the building next to the post office downtown, and they're very, very helpful. They also have these information sheets, which they provided us one, but it's just the generic one. So let me just show you what they gave us here. So this is just general, and this is in the Dropbox folder I shared. General, legal requirements for any business, right? But they have these sheets for different industries. I think they have one for restaurants. They have one for food trucks. They might have one for barber shops or hairstylers. So they'll give you a list of all the laws and agencies that you need to deal with as that type of business. So I just wanted to mention that because it's really helpful to people rather than hunting around the Hawaii revised statutes to figure that out for yourself. Just go down there and they will, if they don't have a sheet, they will still try to help you. So I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, I think, I don't know if there's free services at the tax department or the Department of Labor that are similar. I haven't heard about it. I think, like Kimi said, the DCCA is really, really helpful as far as an agency goes, and they've won national awards for that. So I would imagine they're probably top of the line in Hawaii. So And they have relationships with the other agencies, so they'll tell you exactly where to go if you need tax help or help or things like that. They will actually direct you. So they're very good. That's all I had to say.
Yeah.
If
They
anyone
are the most useful agency.
Yeah. Okay, Kat, you can go back to your questions now. I just wanted to make sure we had time for that.
Sure. Okay, so for our presenters, this one kind of goes to timing issues. Once you register and sign up, but you aren't active yet, how does that affect your taxes?
Well, I'll jump into that one. I think, you know, the act of registering and forming your company doesn't affect your taxes if you're not conducting business through it. If you're not getting business income, then there shouldn't be any tax that's, you know, accruing on that. So yeah, the simple act of registering doesn't create a tax issue. It is, but let's assume here that we're in LLC, right? So I don't know, I hope I'm not like stomping on Chris's presentation here too, but yeah, if you're an LLC and you're a single member and you're a person, like say I own an LLC and I'm renting my house out to someone and I'm getting rental income. That's when the tax starts, you know, that's when tax is implicated, when you start actually receiving income. And on that, you just report that on your own individual return again. So, but yeah, short answer, formation and not doing anything shouldn't affect your taxes.
Cool, thank you. Okay, there are several questions going to sole proprietors. So, I guess question one, is there something you need to do to either end your business and no longer operate as a sole proprietor? So I guess before we talk about sole proprietors, we should probably establish that sole proprietors are not separate business entities under law, right? So, okay, is there something you need to do to either end your business and no longer operate as a sole proprietor? Sole proprietors are not businesses. Okay. Is there something you need to do to make sure that your sole proprietor business is still in operation every year as far as the state goes? Again, sole proprietor, not a separate business, no separate filings.
Not a business entity. Right.
The only thing though, I would say that, I don't know, maybe they're referring to their general excise tax, like anything like that. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, there's no annual maintenance requirements other than that. If you're, you know, you want to, if you have if the question is, if you have a GE license and you don't intend to do business anymore, then you should terminate that GE license so that you don't have to continue to file zero income returns.
Yeah,
Right.
if I could add,
Yeah.
basically, first of all, you should never be a sole proprietor. So you should at least have an
That's exactly what I was going to say.
means that you're going to be taxed like a sole proprietor. So there's no additional tax work, but you have the shield of the LLC. And if anyone can name a business that has no liability, then I'll give you, you know, a bag of M&Ms. But I've never heard of a business that has no liability risk. Secondly, when you convert to an LLC, it's not really a conversion like going from LLC to corporation, because you're starting from a place where you don't have a legal entity. You're basically creating a new business. So you need to transfer everything to LLC. And, you know, so winding down sole proprietor isn't just, you know, stopping, but you have to actually transfer stuff to the LLC. You may have contracts that you signed in your own name. You may have, you know, employees, then you got to rehire them in the LLC. So it's not simply waving a magic wand, you know, but it's worth the effort, I would say, but it's a little bit of a humbug in the beginning. So that's all I had to say.
Yeah, and actually, Greg, if I can tag on to that. So, I mean, like Kat says, a sole proprietorship does not exist as a legal entity, which means it's good in that you didn't have to create it. It's bad in the fact that you, yourself, and you can't wind yourself up. So there's nothing that you really need to do, but let's say that you signed a lease as yourself. And there are going to be, this is kind of getting in the weeds a little bit, but in every lease document, there are going to be terms that continue beyond the expiration of the lease, basically in perpetuity. So unless you get that lease assigned over to your LLC, or get a termination agreement that says, you know, notwithstanding anything else, all obligations are off the table, you are technically on the hook forever in that. So like
So in
Greg
that
says,
case, Kimi, in that
never
case,
be a sole
Kimi,
proprietorship.
how do you do an LLC in that case if the landlord's unwilling to allow you to assign? Can you offer maybe a personal guarantee because it doesn't hurt you because you're already liable? I mean, is there?
Yeah. I mean, the solution to that would probably be a personal guarantee, although those, as an attorney, make my skin crawl because the whole point of a limited liability company is to not personally guarantee anything.
But if you sign the
If you're
lease
in that
anyway
situation,
in
that's
your own
probably
name,
your way out.
yeah, if you sign the name,
Yeah, you're already on the
your
hook.
name, then you're no worse off, right? So that might be a way, at least
Right.
move it, because otherwise the LLC can't do business without a space.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. We've had a couple of people like that where that's exactly what happened is they let the switch the tenant over to the LLC, but they took a personal guarantee out of the member or the owner, whoever it is.
Okay, I had one question. I need to find it here. Oh, here's a G tax question. I'll just read it. I'm not sure the question. It says, what percentage of the GET, what percentage is the GET, and is it applied to gross/net income and you pay it at the end of the year, or does it apply to paying employees in Hawaii, or how does it work? Yeah, so I think that's a general question. I can answer that one.
Sorry, my phone was kind of being a little weird. So the question is that what's the GET rate and what else?
What's the GET rate? Is it applied to gross or net income, and do you pay it at the end of the year? Or does it apply to paying employees in Hawaii, or how does it work? So it sounds like they need the general concept of the GET.
Okay, general concept GET, the rate is 4%, but then there's also county surcharges that will apply, that may apply. So on Oahu, it's a county surcharge of 0.5%. You are able, as the business owner, you are able to pass that on to your customers. So that's why you have the rate of 4.712%. Basically, you pass it on, and that will allow you to, it'll cover your tax bill. The GET is assessed against your gross income, so no deductions. And you pay it periodically depending upon how much your business expects to pay in tax. So basically, if it's like over $4,000 a year, you're going to have to pay it monthly, report and pay monthly.
So it has nothing to do with employees, right?
There's nothing to do with employees, correct.
And also, I think you've seen 4.712, or before it was 4.1667. And the reason is, Ikaika can explain that.
Yeah, those additional percentages basically allow the business to pass that on to their employees, to the customers, excuse me, and the customers, by paying that amount, cover the tax liability for the business owner, who is the responsible party for paying tax.
Yeah, I think the thing is, the seller has to pay the tax whether they collect it or not, right?
Right, correct.
You collect the 4% tax, or 4.05, whatever it is.
Right.
That is tax. The tax you collected is a revenue that you have to pay on. And so by truing it up to 4.712, you basically made yourself whole on the tax.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other thing to keep in mind too is that if you have a business that does that operates statewide, that the rates are going to be different from county to county too. I think they might all be the same now currently, but
4.5%.
it's all, I think it's all 4.5 now. I think they've all, but for a while the Big Island didn't have it, and then it had they had a 0.25% county surcharge, but now it's at 0.5.
Let's see, there's a question. Since a sole proprietor is not a business, I don't think that's exactly what we said, but when I file my annual tax with the IRS in the state of Hawaii, my 1099s are included and are considered sole proprietor business income, and are taxed by the state. Do you still need to file GET? I would say yes. You know, if
yes,
consulting
Yeah.
consulting fees or independent contractor fees. Those are
Yeah.
subject to sales tax.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Whether you're a sole proprietor, whatever way you're organized, gross income is gross income for a tax perspective. So you have to, and if it's earned in Hawaii, then it's subject to GET.
Okay, we have 1 minute left. Kat, do you have any final question that you want to
Yeah,
throw
I
out there?
think
And then-
one last question, this is more of a general question. Do I need to do something different or additional to be a woman-owned or minority-owned or veterans-owned business?
In terms of registering, no, it's the exact same process. Kat, you can probably weigh in on this if there's like a benefit to or a different program that you would do it with, but in terms of registering with the DCCA, you file just like everybody else.
Correct. Correct.
But there are programs that benefit minorities and women.
Yeah,
So,
Mhm.
I know the
absolutely. But
SBA
to create a
has,
business, it's the same
Particularly
process.
federal contracting programs, I think,
Yeah,
do give
federal grants.
women, veteran, and minority-owned businesses some benefits. But in terms of creating the entity and filing at a state level, there's no additional filing that needs to be done.
there's no box in the articles.
Yeah, there's no special, there's no box that gets checked off. There's nothing special about it that'll show up.
Are you Korean or something like that?
All right.
All right, on that note, well, if you have further questions, we'll stay online for a few more minutes. I want to thank Ikaika and Kimi for the great presentation and information and for the participation today and all the great questions. I hope we see you in future webinars. We'll continue on for another 4 webinars, maybe 5, we might add one. But thank you again, and hopefully we'll be seeing you next time. And if the team can stay online for a few more minutes, that'd be great. See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
If you do have a question, you could unmute yourself and speak to us. So. Thanks, guys.
Hi there.
Oh yeah, who do we have here?
This is Rourke.
Okay.
I just had a quick question about buying property. Does it make more sense to buy under an LLC? And if so, are there any other tax benefits to it?
Yes. my first reaction is always going to be, do not enter into a contract as yourself. Yes, buy it as an LLC. And as far as the tax benefits go, Ikaika?
I assume, Rourke, I assume you're buying it for like as a business property or an investment property.
Purpose?
Is that correct?
And yeah, investment.
As an investment. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, the same as the tax effect of buying the property in an LLC is the same as if you just bought it individually. It's one layer of tax, right? So, yeah, and then so that income comes in, it just flows through directly to you. And you'd report, so for rental income you just report it on schedules on your state and federal income tax return.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Rourke,
you're
I think
welcome.
particularly if you're going to be like renting it out or if there's any liability potential with the property,
Definitely.
like let's say you're renting it out
Put
to
it
a
in
tenant
LLC.
and the tenant is unhappy and sues you, it would be better for the tenent just do the LLC, right?
Correct.
Not you personally. So
Yeah, not you.
from a liability perspective, I think a lot of people are putting their properties, particularly the investment and rental ones, into companies.
If you have more than one property, you should think about forming multiple LLCs just to keep it separate. But that's this is
It spreads the liability across all of the companies.
Yeah.
Also, it's easier to sell it if you have it in a single LLC.
That too.
Sell your LLC.
We have Carrie.
Big
who's
LLC
raising her
fan.
hand.
Yeah, okay, Carrie.
Yes, sir. So I do have a question, and this is what Kimi mentioned at the very beginning. My business name has the periods,
Mhm.
and comma. I said, "Oh my gosh, that's me."
Oh no.
So how can
That's okay.
I still change it? My bank account is periods and commas as well. So what should I do?
So a couple of different steps. One is, yes, you can change the name of your company. There are forms available for that on the DCCA. You can just go, so I think that there's a list of forms available, go to LLC, and then name change. Next step would be you would need to go and tell your bank, look, I'm changing the name, and you'd have to go through each step with each different company or entity. But yes, don't worry, you can absolutely change the legal name of your company. There's nothing wrong with that. I've had plenty of clients do it.
So what about my my EIN and G? Does it affect it too, or does it populate, or what do I have to do with those two? Do I have to do something to
that's a
make
case-
changes on those?
I think that's a case by case probably where you'd have to do a name
Yeah,
and you have to look at each like license and figure out whether it matters, but I would imagine they would want to know your real name if you changed it.
yeah.
Yeah.
me
Okay.
too.
Well, thank you so much.
No problem.
Hey, Kimmy, I have a funny story. When I started Vantage Council,
Oh no.
I thought I was being clever. And I still think it's a good idea. I named it Vantage Council LLC, a limited liability law company.
Oh God.
What?
I said,
Like, why?
oh God. I said, oh
Well,
God.
But the last part is necessary.
Vantage
Limited liability law company, you have to put that
It's
in your
by law,
Yeah.
right?
by Supreme Court. But my innovation was putting the LLC in the middle because that way, if I shorthanded it, I could still say I was Vantage Council LLC.
Very clever, Greg. Very cute.
Right. All right, next.
Yeah, if that came across my desk, I'd be like, what are you doing, Greg?
I'm sure you wondered that already about me. Is there any other question by the attendees here?
There's a question from Melissa. It's a follow-up to Rourke's question. What if they already bought a property, but now they want to create an LLC to hold it? Of course, you can create an LLC. You can convey the property into the LLC. Note that that will be subject to conveyance tax because that's a taxable transaction. But you certainly can create the LLC and move it over.
Kat, is that still true if it's a single member LLC and you're the owner of the property?
Yes, there are no exemptions under Chapter 247.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing too is that
If you create a trust and you move it into your trust, that's an exempt transaction.
That's
But
cool.
moving it into a single purpose and single member LLC still is taxable for purposes of conveyance tax.
and if you have a lease, you need to transfer the lease, but FYI, it doesn't get you out of existing liabilities. So if you've had a slip and fall already, and you can't get out of it by forming an LLC afterwards. So you want to, do it sooner rather than later.
Ooh, I have one question that came to me via direct message. Is there a way I can find out if my company is up to date on tax filings and reportings, or make sure that my company is on good terms beside the good standing reporting on the DCCA? I mean, you could get like a tax clearance certificate
Yeah.
that
That would be my
is
recommendation.
issued by the Department of Taxation. It basically says, yep, you're up to date. All taxes have been paid.
How about Hawaii Tax Online?
Yeah,
I know
and
my LLC PET license is on Hawaii Tax Online, but I don't know if there's anything else up there that I can check. But anyway, yeah, we're not tax people.
I don't think that I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Hawaii Tax Online will tell you about your compliance. I think you need to pull a.
You have to get the tax clearance.
I think you might have to get a tax clearance. Yeah.
And I'll drop
Yeah.
a link to
There's
the
no
tax
shortcut to
clearance
that.
certificate into the chat so that.
But be careful because there's a concept of let sleeping dogs lie. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You might poke the bear and
That too.
wake it up and find out that you have a
Yeah,
ton of tax
yes.
liability. So heads up.
yeah,
But I will post the
Yeah.
link in the chat.
because that if they say that you're not current, then the next call you're going to get is probably from the tax investigator. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And usually, I would say that usually the tax clearance, the application for a tax clearance is usually only done in connection with a specific event. Like you're selling, you're selling your company, or you're trying to enter into some kind of a contract. So maybe there is, there's an upside into poking the bear too. But just I've not really encountered too many clients who have just said, I just want to check on the status of where I'm at currently.
I've
It
never seen
definitely
a
is
client
much-
say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I want to talk to the tax department just out of curiosity."
Yeah. So usually the tax clearance application is done in connection with some kind of event that yields there's a financial upside for the applicant.
Well, you need it as a condition to something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I know there's a few more people still on, maybe just hanging out, listening in, because these guys are so interesting and, but are there any more questions for the speakers, or you're all good? Okay. All right. Well, awesome job. We will be in touch with the editing process of your chapter, so that we can create the manual. So this is Kimi and Ikaika. We'll be in touch with you on that. And
All right.
going to do another draft, or do you want
Great.
to go start the editing process first?
Well, let's discuss
I
this
don't think we
offline.
actually-
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that's a good idea, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks
we'll
everyone
talk-
for attending.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about it now.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.